Sandy Alcantara takes the L against the Phillies, another one-run defeat for the Marlins, but Sandy Alcantara kept his Cy Young campaign rolling. Jordan Groshans made his debut. No Ks, there is that. Also, looking forward to tonight's game. Edward Cabrera going for the fish, and it is a young lineup. Plenty to get into on today's Locked On Marlins, and it is a solo pod. Yes, sir, solo pod. Just me getting into all of the news from yesterday and previewing tonight's game.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings and welcome to Locked On Marlins. This is your daily Marlins podcast with me, of course, Peter Pratt. Do not forget to follow me on Twitter, guys, at Miami_Marlins_UK. Please subscribe to the pod. It's available free and available everywhere, and it's a daily pod. There's 5 episodes a week, and this is the Wednesday episode. If you are watching on YouTube, hello, greetings, and welcome to my living room. Yes, it is late in the UK, a late pod. Busy with work, I actually have a day job, would you believe? Oh, as well as this, and as well as watching the Marlins, and as well as being a chef, and a tennis player and a golfer. Nevertheless, it's pretty late, hopping on for a relatively breezy pod, a solo pod. Really looking back on yesterday's game. Sandy Alcantara, we talked about it yesterday with Sean. What could Sandy do? Big start for him after getting, it wasn't a struggle against the Phils, but it wasn't vintage Sandy. What were we going to see in this game going against the same lineup 2 times in a row for Sandy, albeit this one was at home? And for me, Sandy can't deliver. It wasn't, again, I would say, vintage Sandy. And in many ways, it hasn't been vintage since the break, really. And I know Sandy post-game, you may not have caught it, but Sandy post-game was talking about, he's been trying to really work hard on his slider, try and get the slider back. I think it's been a pitch that has maybe slightly disappeared from his command, let's say, since the break, and he's been working hard to try and get that pitch back. He's got plenty to lean on, and he continues to lean on it. But Sandy Alcantara, in the end, takes the L. 7 innings for Sandy, 8 hits, just the 1 walk, 4 Ks, and 1 home run given up. And it is Nicky Maton. This is why baseball is so wild. There has been only one guy all year that has taken Sandy Alcantara deep 2 times. And it is, yes, of course it is the Phillies stud, Nicky Maton. And let's be honest, he loves them up in the zone. He loves it in that area. I mean, you kind of see it, you think, how has he got that out? How has he muscled it out? It reminds me of a similar home run that Vaughn Grissom hit a few weeks back as well. But up in the zone, Maton turned on 1, and that wins the game. A 2-run blast there. The Marlins were leading at that stage 1-0, and that was down to a Brian De La Cruz bomb. Just about got it over the fence into the corner. Great to see De La Cruz back. I'm pretty sure Noah Berger was probably tweeting the life out of that one, and rightly so. Good to see De La Cruz. The lineup, it was against the lefty. The lineup was all righties, as always. But as always, again, for the Marlins offense, Falter shuts them down. He goes 6 innings. The 1 run, which was the De La Cruz home run. 4 Ks for him. But another lefty that the Marlins offense struggles against. And it's that, unfortunately, we look back, it's that magical combination of 5 hits or less and 1 run or less. The Marlins drop another game where the offense doesn't show up. Surprise, surprise. Against lefties all year, it has been a serious struggle. Miggy Rowe was up there at the top of the lineup with 2 of those hits. And De La Cruz with the other one. When you look at the lineup, the funny thing is, for certain, is the fact that Nick Fortes, now in the cleanup spot now. And when Nick Fortes is DHing, it is so bad. The numbers are absolutely terrible when he's the DH. There's nothing to think of from a catching perspective, and you just got to concentrate on hitting. Fortes seems to really struggle with that. He's miles better. I think he's a 280 hitter when he's catching the game. And when he's hitting as a catcher versus as a DH only, it is really, really poor, which is wild. However, having grown up playing a lot of cricket, I used to be a wicketkeeper, would you believe? So I was a wicketkeeper, and I actually found that my game improved at times because I was behind the stumps, and you just get to see more pitches, right? In cricket, it's more, more balls that you'd get to see, and you'd start to kind of just pick up the pace of the ball and the bounce and the movement on the wicket. So it would help, and I guess from Fortez's perspective, it's really helping him. He gets his eye in. He's seeing a lot more pitches than anyone else. And for whatever reason, he's able to translate that at the plate. So here's the thing. No more Nick Fortes DHing. I think we can. There's other guys that need at bats. It's not like Nick Fortes. We need to know anything more about Fortes at this point. He's going to be on the roster in 23. We know that. He's going to be on the opening day roster. Him and Stallings are going to be the two catchers. We already know that. So why the Marlins are continuing to roll with Fortes in the cleanup spot, DHing, I don't know. There's other guys they could give the at bats to that they're maybe uncertain on at this point. Haydar Encarnacion, I think, was perhaps a really good one. No Encarnacion in the lineup at all yesterday, and he's been great against lefties. So I'm not clear on that decision. I guess computer said no. This whole kind of lineup, it's pretty frustrating as a fan at this point. We want to see the guys given a chance. But nevertheless, going back to Sandy Alcantara, as we should, Sandy, for me, kept his Cy Young, lead intact. Clearly, it would have been optimal if he went, 9 innings, another complete game and a win. 1-0 win for the Marlins with Sandy going 9 would have been sensational. But for me, he remains the clear-cut leader, of course, for the Cy Young. His next start, it's a UK-friendly, baby. So if you are looking at where Sandy will start next, if that's all you're watching right now, if it is only Sandy starts, then it is a UK-friendly one on Sunday, which is probably not optimal. Haven't looked to see when the Dolphins play. I'll probably do that quickly on the fly now. But the Marlins will be going on Sunday, 6:45, against the Washington Nationals. So a really, on paper, really nice lineup there, matchup, for Sandy on Sunday to, again, further cement his case. Yes, the Dolphins are also going at 6 o'clock p.m. UK time. So there's going to be a big clash there. Dolphins, Ravens, big game. Going to be a really interesting game, I think, to watch in general. The Ravens certainly look like the Ravens last week. And the Dolphins are going to be tested, I think, a lot more than they were against the Patriots in game week 1. So there may not be many eyeballs on. So this is the point, guys. If you are missing the games, tune into Locked On Marlins, and I'll get you right up to speed with all the action, what's been going on. I appreciate it's not easy to dedicate time to the Marlins now. From Sunday's game, last Sunday's game for the Dolphins, it was clear that basically no one was watching the Marlins. There was not one tweet about the Marlins throughout that game at all, other than from the media guys following along and from me and maybe one or two others. But pretty much all eyeballs, rightly so at this time of the year, on the Dolphins. They look lively. The Marlins, clearly their season is over. However, Sandy's season is not over. And Sandy, we shouldn't forget this, yesterday taking his innings count over 200. So he is back-to-back years with over 200 innings. He is like no other in Major League Baseball. The usage is like no other. And, the amount of games and times he's been 7 innings with 2 runs or less, there just simply is no one like Sandy Alcantara. He remains the favorite for the Cy, and I think he will win the Cy next outing against the Nats. Like I said, on paper, feels really nice. However, the Nats, they've kind of come alive since the trade deadline, which is weird, right? In baseball, weird scenes. Juan Soto traded, Josh Bell traded. Next thing is Nats are winning ball games. Baseball, hey? Wild scenes. Nevertheless, guys, it's time for our first ad of the day. And this is, of course, my new favorite one. And summer's winding down and the nights are getting longer, but the breeze isn't the only thing that's getting stiff. That's right. This episode is sponsored by Blue Chew. Guys, we all know that confidence can take you far in life, just look at me. That's especially true in the bedroom, especially when it's time to step up to the plate. That's where Blue Chew comes in. So Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, but in chewable tablets and at a fraction of the cost. You can take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity. The process is simple. You can sign up at bluechew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. The best part, it's all done online. No visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the US of A and prepared and shipped direct to your door in a discreet package. No shipping to the UK, by the way. For all your UK listeners, I checked it out. No shipping to the UK, I am afraid. So, if you could benefit from extra confidence when it's time to perform, chew it and do it, baby. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. You can try Blue Chew free. The promo code locked on at checkout. Just pay the $5 shipping. That's bluechew.com. Promo code locked on to receive your first month free. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast. Absolutely love that one. Absolutely love that ad. So, guys, looking ahead to this evening's game, Edward Cabrera is going, and that should be wonderful. Fish Stripes posed this question I saw on Twitter earlier, and I think they may have an article that accompanies it. I will catch up on that. But they were asking, who's the number 2 for the Marlins? I was talking about it last week, that Jesus Luzardo is emerging and is perhaps more valuable from a trade perspective than Pablo Lopez right now, linked to the performance and the years of control. However, I don't think that is actually the question and the answer. And I think it's a really interesting topic. Like, we know Sandy's the 1, but who is the 2 right now? And in reality, there's 4 emerging candidates. Trevor Rogers, if we go back to first half 2021, was the clear 2. He was. Trevor Rogers since then, not so much. However, it has been so encouraging to see Trevor and his return back to form since his break, his IL break. And sometimes you need them. And in lost seasons particularly, you need them. The sophomore slump is real, and Trevor has felt that sophomore slump. No doubt about it, but he is back in the mix. Luzardo has absolutely ascended since he's joined the Marlins organization, got back to his old ways, thinking about his stuff, going in attack mode. Great to see. Pablito, just so Lopez. He is so dependable. The question I have on Pablo Lopez is, do us as Marlins fans, do we slightly overrate Pablo Lopez? We've lived and breathed Pablo Lopez for many years now. As this young rotation and this rebuild has started to evolve, Pablo's been a mainstay in many ways for the Fish. But I do wonder if, as fans, we love Pablo. I love Pablo. But I do wonder if we slightly overrate him. Here's the other young stud coming through, Edward Cabrera. Eddie Cabrera, for me, Sandy 2.0. Some wildness in there. It remains in there. But for me, Eddie has the ability, he has the ceiling of Sandy Alcantara. Yes, there's been some health concerns in the past few years. We know that. But from a talent, a stuff perspective, Eddie is right up there with Sandy, no doubt about it. And then you've got Braxton Garrett. Not to forget Brax. He's been demoted down to AAA, which I think was interesting, was called up for the doubleheader. Not enough innings to go around. They didn't want to go a 6-man rotation at this stage of the year, which is interesting. Because, for Pablo, they seemingly want to keep pushing him further, get an interesting decision. With Sandy, there's no question they want to shut him down or limit him. Full go. Again, we're in the middle of September in a lost year. I think this is really interesting. I know he's in the Cy race, but what happens if Sandy gets hurt the next 3 starts or whatever it might be? It would be absolutely shocking. It would be totally Marlins, the cursed franchise, if Sandy would get hurt right now. And to me, that's got to be on the Marlins if that would happen. That has to be on them. They've got the computer managing everything in terms of lineups days in advance. What about Sandy? When are we going to protect our ace? He's got past the threshold of 200 innings now. Maybe, I guess that's a personal thing for him. But really, for Sandy, if he's shut down now, he still wins the side. But they're not going to shut him down. And in reality, I think it's lunacy. To be honest, I'm surprised that they're pushing Pablo so hard and far as well. There's no major value in that. Pablo's proven it. He's been there all year. It's time to let him, take a breather too. Interesting. Anyway, Braxton Garrett was the guy that was optioned. Braxton has had a great year too. So going back to Fish Stripes and their question, who is emerging as the number two? I mean, there's four guys. There's four twos. The Marlins have one ace, an ace of an ace, a Cy, and then they have four twos, in my opinion. Anyway, that's if Trevor Rogers continues. Pablo, Trevor, Jesus Luzardo, and Edward Cabrera. All studs! All studs. And this is why it's so infuriating for us as fans that we, with just a half-competent offense this season, it would feel so different. It really would. Nevertheless, I wanted to quickly segue into it. I didn't get time to talk about it yesterday with Sean, but I want to talk about the two big guys, the two big boys, the free agents that were signed in the offseason. And let's be totally honest. Avi Garcia, it feels like was Derek Jeter's guy, but also I feel like it was a consolation prize where the actual target it felt like was Nick Castellanos. For whatever reason, that cooled. It didn't happen. Maybe they couldn't get the commitment from Bruce Sherman. I don't know the specifics around it, but Nick Castellanos ended up going obviously to the Phillies. Hasn't had a great year either. So listen, the Phils have ended up committing $100 million to him. The Marlins committing just over $50 million to Avi Garcia. Avi Garcia, the hamstring strain returns. He's now shut down, effectively ending his season. And let's be honest, it's been a very disappointing year for Avi Garcia. Never got going. It was ground us to third early. However, as Marlins fans, we know. Well, I say we know. From an Avi Garcia, he's been a proven major league hitter at other places, at other stops. So we have to remain optimistic that Avisel Garcia returns to the Avisel Garcia that we were expecting in 2023. We have to expect it because this can't go on being in this kind of, this type of production. It's been an elongated slump, longer than Cooper Loop's slump, which was a real bad slump for 2 months. Avi's just really struggled out the box, never got his year going, looked to be carrying a bit too much weight. I hope personally he gets his body right, comes back firing, wants to prove a point, and just has a blazing 2023. And as we've also seen as well, Avi Garcia, he performs in odd number calendar years. So 2023 will be and can be the year of Avi Garcia. The question will be, and not the question really, for me, the Marlins haven't really deviated from this. Avi Garcia, he's playing pretty much every day, and he's playing in right field. Let's plug him in now. We know he's there. He's not being traded because really the value doesn't link to the contract that's there right now. Some teams, and as Craig Mish reported, the Braves were sniffing around trying to do a swap deal for Ozuna, swap bad money for bad money. And that's because the Braves, they're smart. And they're maybe thinking what I'm thinking, that there's a player there. There's a legitimate player in Avi Garcia who just hasn't found it in his first year in Miami. So as fans and as a host of this pod, and in general, I think we should be more optimistic or hopeful maybe is the right word, that Avi Garcia can return to the Avi Garcia type of form. Yes, he's never touched 30 home runs in his career before. And yes, that was a faux pas by Kim on the broadcast, but it was, a minor faux pas. We can forgive that. Avi Garcia, I think, will bounce back. Jorge Soler, he is not opting out of this deal. His year is over as well. I think he's played in 70 games, 71 games. On the face of it, it's ended up being, not on the face of it. The reality is it's a disappointing year. However, it's mainly hindered by injury. We're now going into next year. The question I've got is, if the Marlins, heading into this offseason, let's say Soler had done what he'd done in 22. Let's say he was on the Braves win the World Series again. He's World Series MVP. And the Marlins strike a deal for Jorge Soler for $15 million this year and $9 million as an option next year. How would you feel about that now? Would you feel good, bad, indifferent? Me personally, I would feel completely fine for that. Jorge Soler, uh, he was as advertised. I don't think the Marlins whiffed on it, to be honest with you. I think they got exactly what they were expecting. And yes, the injuries have hampered Jorge Soler, but for me, the Marlins got what they paid for. They're going to get what they paid for next year. It was always planned. I said this at the time of the deal. It felt to me like it's most likely a 2-year deal. The 12 million in this year, 15 the following year, and then the other player option of 9. The Soler is going to likely try and play out of that deal and look to re-sign. I always felt this was a 2 rather than a 3, and I think that is still on course to be. Yes, it's going to feel, a little bit painful for us, and not for us. We don't have to pay the money, but for Bruce Sherman, when he's handing out 15 million after just performing in 70 games. But injuries happen, guys. It doesn't matter. You can, there's been tons of guys that have been missing this year, the whole year, and they've had no value out of that. And they've had a lot higher salaries than Jorge Soler's 15 mil. Me personally, I am optimistic on Jorge Soler. I put it out there the other day on Twitter. I think a 15 million a year deal for him, I think will look good value for the Marlins at the end of 2023. Yes, he needs to get his back right, and he says he's never dealt with back issues previously. So that is a concern. Jazz Chisholm, I'm not sure he's dealt with back issues before. I don't know why it was the year of the back or the hamstring. Actually, last year there was a few hamstrings as well, but this year, lower back issues and hamstrings. They've hampered the Marlins, no doubt. And but like I said, for me, Soler, 15 mil, comfortable with that number. And I think you'll get production out of it in line with what Adam Duvall delivered the year before. And yes, Duvall was cheaper, and the Marlins managed to get a better dollar deal. But again, to Craig's point a few weeks back, you have to pay to encourage these guys to come and sign in Miami. Jorge Soler was off the back of a World Series win in parks, day in, day out in Atlanta. Miami can be a tough sell on that front. I completely get that. And so we're going to have to, if we're going to dip into free agent market, have to overpay. Nevertheless, for me, I'm plugging him into the DH spot next year, more so than anything else. I want to see less of Soler in left field. I want to see him DHing. His numbers as a DH, miles better. And let's just plug him in there, DH, let him just try and tear it up. That then brings it back around to first base and Garrett Cooper, because again, the benefit we were seeing for Coop was more DH time, protect his body, less injuries. So that's the collateral damage here is I think Coop's going to have to play more first base next year than he has this year and perhaps the year before. Main reasons are Avi Garcia. Jesus, I can't even remember his name. He's gone. He's dead to me now. Jesus Aguilar is obviously gone. So that takes away an obvious first base guy. Plus, this situation with Lewin Diaz, it's not been that promising. Let's be totally honest. We keep talking about it. He's in the lineup tonight, but Lewin Diaz at first base, not overly promising. So for me, this roster, it's very intriguing. The fact that the Marlins don't have a ton of wiggle room here. Avi and Soler are going to be around. They're going to stick with Coop. That's going to be your core with Jazz. So those 4 guys, it's going to be the same 4. Marlins fans are going to feel extremely nervous and pessimistic about that grouping. They are. And you can't help but be nervous and pessimistic about it because of what we've seen this year. So the Marlins are going to have to do something using their high-end pitching to go out there and sort out this center field situation once and for all. There's, it has to be done now. It had to be done last year, and they couldn't get a deal done. They couldn't address it. But the Marlins are going to run it back, and it feels like it's possible that they do run it back with this offense because of the contract situation. They're going to need to supplement it again. Stallings' stick has dropped way off. Fortes' stick is fine as long as he's not DHing. And then, what can they do at shortstop? So these are the questions for the Fish now. Can they get a center fielder, and can they get an offensive-minded shortstop? Those are the 2 holes, major holes. Third base, it feels to me like they're going to mix and match. Wendell, Birdie, Groshans, anyone. anyone over there. Third base, Brian Anderson, we'll wait and see, but gut feel is no on BA. There's so many, there's going to be so much chatter leading up to the offseason, in the offseason on Locked On Marlins, talking about what the Marlins could and should do. But for me, I'm starting to crystallize it in my mind and see it pretty clearly now. Let's go and get that center fielder. Let's go and get an offensive shortstop. Jazz is there at second base. Coop's at first. Mix and match at third. You got your new center fielder. Plumb them in. We'll work out who plays left. Could well be Blade, and then Jorge Soler DHing. Sandy's rolling. One of the arms has got to go and get that center fielder. We'll wait and see who that is. But for me, the plans are starting to become clear. I think the Marlins, the offense just can't be as bad as it has been. I think Avi can bounce back. I think Soler can bounce back. I think Jazz can stay healthy. I think Coop can stay healthy. I think Wendell can stay healthy. But they need a backup plan, and they need backup plans for all these guys. That's going to wrap us up, guys. It is 25 minutes in a solo pod. Actually, 26 it has just ticked into. And I appreciate you joining me on Locked On Marlins. It's the Wednesday episode, solo pod. Of course, I'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to be recapping the game this evening. The Phillies look to add more pain to the fish. Edward Cabrera going, a very young lineup. Groshans remains in the lineup, so interested to see how he goes. Lewin Diaz is back in. JJ Blade is back in. Very young-looking lineup. Edward Cabrera has been successful against lefties. Ton of lefties in this Phillies lineup, so very intrigued to see how it goes. Let's see if the Marlins can squeak a victory out and maybe get this offense rolling. In the meantime, guys, thank you for joining me on Locked On Marlins, making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. I'll be back tomorrow on Thursday with more, of course, and Go Fish Tonight.